The chair recognizes the honourable member for St. Anne's.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise today on behalf of the great constituents of the St. Anne's constituency and to add my contribution to this lively debate on longevity and regenerative therapies bill. Madam Speaker, we can recall when Peter Nygaard was out in the media and pushing the Christie administration to bring in stem cell therapy opportunities to the Bahamas. The Christie administration won that election, Madam Speaker, but there was tremendous controversy within our religious communities and within Bahamian households on a whole. We were beginning, Madam Speaker, with what has been described today as something that is now out of date. Back then, we were beginning to meddle in God's work, Madam Speaker. And there was, Madam Speaker, a business unknown to the majority of the public that had set up on Collins Avenue. It was receiving tissue donations from the Ukraine, donations that were not even being tested for HIV or other serious infections. Madam Speaker, I ask that you limit the points of order. It's going to be a short contribution.
The chair recognizes the
With
honourable
all
member
due
for
respect to the
Stallback.
member for St. Anne's, I think he's actually going in the wrong direction. I do not represent the National Stem Cell Ethics Committee, and I believe that he's making assertions that he cannot substantiate, and I ask him to withdraw them immediately before he create the wrong impression to the international community that our jurisdiction is not monitored. Please, I believe it is distasteful. He has no proof of what he's saying, and if he has proof of what he's saying, please present it to this House of Assembly immediately, because I will be definitely speaking to the representatives of the Ethics Committee, who is responsible for monitoring these protocols that are implemented in the country, and they are safe to provide these therapies throughout our jurisdiction.
Thank you, honourable member. St. Anne's?
Speaker, I'm not giving a contribution from the opposition as a salesman for the jurisdiction on longevity and regenerative therapies. It is my duty to add an opposition's view to the bill before us, which is what we are now debating. So the good member for Tall Pines should become a little bit relaxed in his role here. It's not to quiet the opposition, Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Tall Pines.
Madam Speaker, I will allow the member for Nance to make his contribution. But he made a statement, and unless he can prove what he's saying, I'm asking him to withdraw it because it sends the wrong message in our jurisdiction. I made it very clear in my contribution that our Ethics Committee has found instances where there is violation to the way how it's conducted, and those facilities were actually were required to cease and assist any type of activity. When we're dealing with any type of therapy in any country, when we're dealing with medicine in any country, there are regulatory bodies that will find individuals who are trying to do things outside of the regulation. It is our responsibility to step in for cease and desist. So unless he can bring proof of what is happening, I ask him to withdraw those statements and stay within the realms of whatever he can prove.
Madam Speaker, Tall Pines has interrupted me. And now, Yamakra, I'm talking to Madam Speaker. And now, Madam Speaker, he's gone about after two points of order to get to the point that I was making when he interrupted me. When we were dealing with just this matter as a stem cell legislation, there was a business on Collins Avenue that was getting tissue samples from the Ukraine, and it was selling injections to those desperate for a cure to what ailed them for roughly $25,000. CBS, an international television company, came into the region, interviewed persons in the medical field. It was then identified that that type of business did not seem to be ethical. And within 2 hours, Madam Speaker, that business was shut down. And the next day, the people involved in carrying out that business were no longer in the country. So there's been two points of order, Madam Speaker, but from the last comment from the member from Tall Pines, he simply said what I was in the process of saying during my protected contribution period. And that is there are persons that do not operate within the bounds of ethics under the existing legislation that can, even to members of the medical field, go without the knowledge of their operation. And when they do get caught, in that one particular instance, Madam Speaker, they are stopped from continuing, and in that particular case, they left the country. But the point is, Madam Speaker, is we have a very reputable medical field in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And we must, in all cases, ensure that we protect the reputation not only of our doctors, but of the medicine practiced in this region. There are persons, Madam Speaker, whose intentions are not entirely clear, whatever the profession is. We've seen that with FTX, Madam Speaker, and we've seen that with some businesses under the existing legislation. And God only knows, Madam Speaker, what breaches may come under this proposed longevity regenerative therapies bill. Now, when you look, Madam Speaker, at the objects and purposes of this bill, what is striking and concerning for members in the medical profession is the language contained in the first paragraph, Madam Speaker, of the objects and reasons. It says, this bill seeks to establish the Bahamas as a world leader in medical and wellness tourism in the field of longevity and regenerative medicine, and the field of longevity and regenerative medicine will provide significant economic, educational, social, and health and job opportunities for Bahamian citizens and residents. Madam Speaker, a major motivating factor to this bill, it's contained in the first paragraph of the objects and reasons of this bill, is the economic benefit that can come to the region. Now, when persons, Madam Speaker, are chasing money, you can find that their motivations can be obscured by the desire to enrich themselves. And as was the case with that earlier incident that CBS reported on having come to the country, you found that persons were essentially getting a at cost $1 injection, but being billed $25,000 for it.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Tall Pines.
The member of Finance is determined to belittle the science associated with this piece of legislation. And I find it to be very distasteful, and he is actually backing up the wrong tree. This science is internationally recognized. We have been in the business for a decade, and we have developed a strong reputation in the country for regenerative stem cell therapies and gene therapies in the country. This bill is an extension of the 2013 stem cell legislation that helps us to put even a greater regulatory framework in place as these advanced therapies grow and they become more involved. We need the regulatory framework to do so. Now, I have been in consultation with scientists who are experts in these areas. We have been in contact with individuals in law, both nationally and internationally, and we have come up with a piece of legislation that we are proud of. We believe that it has the capability to advance the regulatory regime in country. We have decided to put funding behind the bill so that we could have the trained personnel to monitor the industry. And we believe that Bahamians can benefit from these therapies as they have been doing long time ago, sometimes even abroad. And so for the member to go on and saying someone has given them a saline solution for $25,000, I think we should take the debate a little bit higher than that. If that is his personal view, that's fine. But I want to put it on the record for the international community and scientists and experts around the world to know that we are serious about this piece of legislation, and we're not going to let politics contaminate it. We're standing shoulder to shoulder with the developed world like Japan. And when we brought the scientists in this country in April, we were praised about what we have been doing in the region. And if the member would just go into literature and see where the Bahamas has been recognized for his contribution in stem cell therapy, all he has to do is search the journals.
Thank you, Honorable Member. St. Anne's?
I can foresee that today is going to be testy all around, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, going back to this business that CBS reported on, they were selling injections around $25,000 a pop, and they basically cost $1. We don't know the background on the testing. We know that it was a business that brought the attention of the international media. So there wasn't a case of one person coming in, I don't know if you would even call them patients, one customer, Madam Speaker, coming in and getting an injection. There had to have been multiple $25,000 injections to be going out to bring in the international media attention to the matter. When you enter into this line of medicine, Madam Speaker, which is basically experimental, you have to be cautious and balance it against the reputation that the Bahamas holds. You're seeing a situation with this legislation where a penalty of $25,000 is meant to be a deterrent, or 2 years in prison. This is actually legislation that could enable some businesses to make multi-million dollars in our region, Madam Speaker. And if you're making millions of dollars off the hopes of persons, because not all of it is going to be genuine, Madam Speaker, when you're selling medicine to persons that have no other resort, Madam Speaker, there almost is no amount of money that they'll be willing to pay to prolong and extend their life, Madam Speaker, to beat that communicable disease, Madam Speaker, that medicine to date hasn't been able to resolve for them. That easy fix, Madam Speaker, you can see the number of weight loss pills and supplements that get sold every day. You know, if I can keep eating my Kit Kat and pop that pill, Madam Speaker, then God bless the manufacturer, Madam Speaker. If that container says natural bush medicine on it, Madam Speaker, then I'm going to know by God is behind this product, Madam Speaker, and I'm going to pop that Kit Kat and that Fanta soda and pop that pill, Madam Speaker. So when we look at it all, Madam Speaker, we have to think of how are we balancing this new area of medicine, Madam Speaker, which, as I said before, is unproven in many instances. How do we balance the economic sexiness of this new medical field against the ethically protected reputation of the practice of medicine in our region already? We all know the childhood story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Can't be too hot and not too cold. If we're going into this, Madam Speaker, we have to get it just right. And from what I've seen, from what I've heard, Madam Speaker, this bill is far from being just right. Madam Speaker, we have a board and we have an ethics committee. The past board under the stem cell legislation was entirely Bahamian, reputable persons in the field of medicine in the Commonwealth of Bahamas carrying out oversight, Madam Speaker. You can find 10 businesses or 10 persons, Madam Speaker, that are going to be reputable. They're not going to create any harm to the reputation of the country. But you can have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, Madam Speaker, that are not practicing in that fine line, that do not have the oversight of the Ethics Committee in time. Look what happened at FTX. We heard in the House from the member for Fox Hill last sitting that there was basically nothing that could have been done to prevent the fraudster. Well, that's an instance with people's money, Madam Speaker. This is not only with people's lives, this is with genetics, Madam Speaker. This is making adjustments to what God has put together, Madam Speaker, for mankind. And we must not only be very careful, Madam Speaker, we must always, as a human race, understand our place and understand God's place in the creation of man and in his time of life here on earth. So, Madam Speaker, it's interesting to know that once again there's been very little consultation with the medical community on this bill. The member for Tall Pines can stand up and say that he's already consulted with the Medical Association, if that's in fact true. No one stood up. Madam Speaker, he can let us know if he's consulted with the Christian Council on this bill, if in fact that's true. Again, no one stood up, Madam Speaker. So we have, Madam Speaker, another bill dealing with medicine where we all heard the Attorney General got the praise. You have a lawyer who's getting praise for a bill that is going to delve into the genetics of humans, that is going to basically, once it can come under the description of longevity or regenerative therapies, whatever it is, it'll get the green light to begin with. There will be, there may be, there should be, in my opinion, there must be continuous oversight from the Ethics Committee and from the board. But what exactly cannot be done under this broad description of longevity and regenerative therapy, Madam Speaker? It's not my field of work, Madam Speaker, but we've all seen the sci-fi movies. We've all heard of the cases. We all dealt, Madam Speaker, with reputable laboratory that is believed, Madam Speaker, not proven, but believed to have been behind the last release of what became known as COVID-19, Madam Speaker. That had the biggest countries, that had the biggest pockets, Madam Speaker, but we had COVID-19 come out of the province of Wuhan, China, where there was a Wuhan COVID laboratory. No one believed that. You either believe that it came from the laboratory that it's named after, or you believe that a bat and a cat mated and somehow the virus jumped into a bowl of soup. Whatever way, Madam Speaker, you can't go after this, Madam Speaker, with only excitement. You can't let the carrot be waggled in front of your face, Madam Speaker, and bite for that carrot, Madam Speaker. We haven't done this before. Some countries may be doing it, but the Bahamas does not need to rush into this line of medicinal therapy, Madam Speaker. There's too many opportunities for unscrupulous persons to make money off of this, Madam Speaker, to make money off of this, Madam Speaker, to the detriment of our reputation. And God forbid, Madam Speaker, that one of those companies, one of those persons doesn't see an opportunity here and makes a mistake, Madam Speaker, and the Bahamas becomes known as releasing the next catastrophe on the world. For those brief reasons, Madam Speaker, I was about to conclude, but I just want to go back, Madam Speaker, in the bill to the Ethics Committee, the makeup of the Ethics Committee, which I had previously said under the existing stem cell legislation that has an entirely Bahamian makeup. All of the members are Bahamian members from different bodies in the medicinal community here in the Bahamas. But when you look at this Ethics Committee, Madam Speaker, it says by section 10, subsection 2, the Ethics Committee shall consist of 7 members. The Chief Medical Officer ex officio, that's going to be a Bahamian, Madam Speaker. B, 2 members shall be qualified and experienced in the field. Where are they going to be from? 2 members shall be qualified as having had experience in or having shown capacity and competency in matters relating to business, science, medicine, bioethics, patient advocacy, scientific research ethics, law, or education. And 2 members shall be internationally known specialists in the field. So you have a committee that's going to consist of 2, 4, 6, and then with the Chief Medical Officer, 7. Now, the other 6 members are not identified as needing to be from this jurisdiction, and it actually says at D, 2 of the members shall be internationally known specialists in the field, field being capitalized, which means it should be a defined term. And in the definitions in section 2, field is defined as, field means the global scientific domain of research and administration of therapies that aim to enhance human healthy longevity, including but not limited to gene therapies, stem cell therapies, and or biological materials derived from stem cells, advanced longevity therapies, immunotherapies, cancer therapies, regenerative therapies, functional medicines, and gerontology. What is not included in that isn't known to me, Madam Speaker, but these are 2 persons that definitely won't be from the Bahamas.
Madam Speaker, if the member would just turn his attention to page 5 and look at section 5, the nomination committee. The nomination committee maintains a list of 25 persons qualified to serve on the ethics committees, including obtaining resumes and references of persons included in this list. What happens in regenerative therapies and stem cell therapies. They're therapies where the normal committee will search the international community to find experts in the field. Not every therapy that comes to the Bahamas, the local team has the capability and expertise to address. And so if you were paying attention for the last 10 years with our ethics committee, you will realize that our ethics committee had a combination of Bahamians from civil society, those from business, those from law, those within the science, and it incorporated a large group of individuals who have the expertise in certain types of therapies and companies who are expressing to operate in the Bahamas. So let's say tomorrow there's a new technology that is available internationally and they want to come to the Bahamas. And we do not have the expert in our medical and our scientific community. It is our responsibility for the ethics committee to find an individual who will guide us with the technology and ensure that we make the right steps. And so when we speak about the board and we speak about the ethics committee, both of them are 7 members. But those boards are definitely under the observation of the Minister of Health and Wellness, and it is our responsibility to make sure those boards and ethics committee are operating effectively. In the ethics committee, we have the capability to form subcommittees. And these subcommittees are looking at experts around the world to guide us in the regulatory framework necessary to monitor a certain type of therapy. I beg to disagree with the member from St. Anne's. The member of St. Anne's is preaching a doom and gloom message. I want him to know that when it comes to gene therapies, we have 2 approved, FDA-approved gene therapies to treat sickle cell anemia. We have used exosomes, we've used stem cells in many forms of therapies, and they have been very effective. This is not a snake oil jurisdiction, and I take it very offensive for him to belittle this piece of legislation that many experts around the world, including experts locally, have been a part of this piece of work, and to turn it into Tom and Jerry is sad. It's a sad day in the House of Assembly.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Sad, sad.
I don't know what all the crying is about, Madam Speaker. I'm talking about your colleagues barking up from their back seat. One from West Grand Bahamas saying he ain't listening to you, and he's right, I wasn't listening to you. I mean, because once again, you got a point of order. The man is rising up on the honorable man from Tall Pines is rising up on a point of order, Madam Speaker, and he starts off strong, but just like any witness, the more you let them speak, Madam Speaker, the more you realize they don't know what they're talking about. Because my point, when I was again interrupted by a point of order, was that the makeup of the ethics committee under this proposed bill, unlike the stem cell bill, it does not restrict it to Bahamians. And so he stood up, the member for Tall Pines stood up. There's too many. I asked you to monitor how many, Madam Speaker. Look at this. Look at this.
Thank you.
The former stem cell bill incorporated both local and international players, so it was not exclusively Bahamian. There is not the technology. We always have to look for expert internationally as well as locally, and if it's not here locally, we have to go internationally.
Thank you. He's saying the exact same thing he did the first time he interrupted on this point. His argument is that his argument seems to be that I am wrong, that the stem cell bill actually was made up, had an ethics committee that was made up of persons that were not Bahamian. Because I was saying that the existing stem cell bill is made up, the ethics committee on the existing stem cell bill is made up of persons that are Bahamian. Yes. But his argument is, when they don't know something, they get an expert from the international community that serves as a consultant. I don't have any problem with that. Okay. And you can have as many international experts as you want to consult under this bill, if God forbid it comes through. But you need to make the Ethics Committee entirely Bahamian under this bill, which presently it is not. It has one member that is clearly going to be Bahamian, and 6 members that could be anyone, and 2 members that are definitely not going to be Bahamian. So if you can make an adjustment to that bill, it'll be better for this bill, because you will actually have Bahamians looking out for the best interest of the Bahamas, and not foreign experts that are looking out for that economic benefit. That case I was talking about earlier, Madam Speaker, dealt with stem cells and involved a gentleman by the last name of Rader. Rader first observed the human injection of fetal stem cells in the mid-1990s at a Ukrainian clinic. In 1995, he began referring his own U.S. patients to Ukraine for fetal stem cell treatment. Rader's first independent stem cell clinic was established in the Bahamas. The clinic reopened in the Dominican Republic after the Bahamian government asked Rader to leave in 2000, following a critical television report aired in the United States. Madam Speaker, this is not a snake-oil jurisdiction. I agree with Tall Pines on that. But when you enter into legislation like this, you have to get it just right. And this goes far beyond dabbling in God's work that stem cell therapy did. This is basically giving you a pot that is so large that just about any type of therapy can come under it. And where it'll take the country, where it'll take the safety of our people and the persons that come here for these therapies, Madam Speaker, is at this point unknown. You can have 10 good apples, and you can have 1 bad apple, Madam Speaker. And that 1 bad apple, Madam Speaker, despite the intimidating $25,000 fine, is not going to be good enough to save this jurisdiction's reputation should something negative happen. Madam Speaker, with those comments and on this bill, the member for St. Anne's thanks you for the protection, and I will now take my seat. Thank you.
And Chair recognizes the honourable member for Tall
Just
Pines.
before, and I will go into this more detail during the wrap-up, but if the member was to look at what he was referring to the Ethics Committee, the member will see that members of the Ethics Committee shall be appointed by, and he should have pointed out that there's a typo in the area too, he usually does, because they say by the, but we'll fix the typo. Minister, following the recommendations of the nomination committee. Okay, the nomination committee. So I want to refer him back to the nomination committee. And the nomination committee is a committee providing recommendations to the minister in the form of the list of persons qualified to serve on the Ethics Committee after consultation with the relevant local and international bodies, scientific bodies, religious and faith-based organizations, and patient advocacy groups based on the criteria of composition of the Ethics Committee as outlined in the Act. You see what it is if he was to just read what the nomination committee does, and the nomination committee is the committee that pretty much is responsible for interviewing candidates who will serve on the Ethics Committee, and the Minister of Health is the person who is responsible. And when you use the minister, you're also referring to cabinet to some degree. So I'm going to go into more details. I think he has read portions of the bill and not the complete bill, which is creating the confusion in his own mind.
Thank you, honourable member.
Madam Speaker, I read that portion of the bill, and he even had a earlier point of order on this nomination committee and the list of 25. He also now touched on the fact that there will be consultation with the religious community. All of those things are going to be done, as this administration has done numerous times. All of those things are going to be done after the fact. They've not consulted these bodies before bringing this bill in the House of Assembly. They're going to do it after the fact, and they're going to consult them. Madam Speaker, when we close the sitting today, and I pass you at the stairwell, I can stop you for a moment and tell you what's going on, and you can give me a response. You may not agree with me, but we would have consulted on the matter. And I know that I've met my legislative requirement to consult with members of a particular community or body in this country. There isn't anything, Madam Speaker, the point between you and I being now complete, there isn't anything, Madam Speaker, that says you have to acquiesce these bodies, you have to make a decision based on their advice. It just means, Madam Speaker, that I must punch a hole in the requirement. There's something that I have to do, I'll do it. I'm not going to pay attention to it after all. It's not a true, Madam Speaker, it's not a true consultation process that's going to impact. And at the end of the day, there's going to be a list of 25. And again, it's not restricted to Bahamians, Madam Speaker. That's the point. You can have persons on the Ethics Committee that aren't even in the country, Madam Speaker, to supervise however many businesses it is. There's no restriction on the number of licenses, Madam Speaker, that can be issued in a single year under this bill. So you could potentially go from having no businesses practicing in this field to 1,000 businesses practicing in this field. And you have to ask, is an ethics committee of 7 people sufficient to monitor them? We had a whole commission, Madam Speaker, that couldn't regulate and catch the frauds carried out by Sam Bankman-Fried in this jurisdiction, Madam Speaker. This isn't about money, Madam Speaker. This is about the human makeup of mankind, extending lives. I mean, who's interested in extending lives? Do people really want to live beyond their 80? Do they want to live into their hundreds? Yeah, I do, Madam Speaker. But that wasn't ever God's plan.
Madam Speaker.
And when I said I do, Madam Speaker, I was referring to Tall Pines gesturing in his seat that he does. I don't.
Yeah, well, between me and you.
I'm a married man, Madam Speaker. I've raised my children, and I'm going to let the next generation come in. I'm not sitting here. I'm not trying to sit over. I'm not trying to maintain control for the rest of my life.
Madam Speaker, the member for Finance, I refer him back to the responsibilities of the Ethics Committee. And I'm going to go into this in full details in the wrap-up, because if he was to just read the responsibilities of the Ethics Committee, he will see that the Ethics Committee has Bahamians and foreign nationals as part of the plan. And the reason why that's important is because when it comes to these sophisticated regenerative therapies, we may not have always the expertise in country, and we must rely on those experts abroad to guide us to make sure that we make the right decisions. But I will go into the details. But since he mentioned longevity, with all due respect, if I could put on some additional years, I'll take it. If you don't want, that's your choice. And so I'm always looking for new therapies for longevity. And when I do find them, I utilize them to the best of my ability to stay healthy. That is my choice, and I accept that responsibility. You can do whatever you want, but I intend to live as long as I possibly can.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Marco City.
Madam Speaker, in terms of the section that the member for Tall Pines raised on the Nomination Committee and the Ethics Committee, I'd only make one point and reserve my comments for when I get up to speak. But Madam Speaker, if there's any takeaway from the member of St. Anne's presentation, Madam Speaker, it is the government's unwillingness to consult as widely as is necessary in advance of these pivotal pieces of legislation because truly there might be potential to assist persons who are facing debilitating diseases, which incidentally was not the primary focus of the speech delivered earlier. It really hammered on the economic front. But the medical council, Madam Speaker, has not been consulted. Really, the principal umbrella organization relative to healthcare have to date not been consulted. Then when you look at civil society and the faith-based organization, and I'm back just to his point of order, they have not been consulted. And then there's a third category, Madam Speaker, which is related to those who played a pivotal role in drafting the first stem cell bill. And that group underscored the value of advanced consultation. It does not remove the responsibility from this administration to not go through another round of consultation because this bill expands the latitude of therapies that would be introduced. And those persons, back with the stem cell bill, Madam Speaker, a number of them, they were not consulted. Now, if he has consulted some of them and we miss them in our phone calls, it would be useful for him to put on the record who they are. But those we spoke to from that group, the first group that framed the stem cell bill, the medical council who's in place today, the faith-based organization with those representatives from civil society, they have not been consulted.
Thank you, honorable member.
Yes, just to speak a little bit about what Marco City said. He said that we focus on the financial benefits of the bill. I beg to disagree. This is real science, and we're speaking about cures, improving the quality of lives of Bahamians and foreign nationals who choose to use our jurisdiction for these therapies. But I want to point your attention to section 4, which speaks about the policy. The minister shall prepare a longevity and regenerative therapy policy, the policy, which shall be approved by cabinet and laid in the House of Assembly. The policy shall be reviewed every 2 years and updated and approved by cabinet and laid in the House of Assembly. The board and ethics committee shall carry out their duties and powers under the act in accordance to the policy. And so I want to make it very clear that when I laid this bill, once you lay a bill in this House of Assembly, it is placed for consultation. We did receive some consultation in support of the bill. And I just want to make it very clear that we're not reinventing the wheel. We have a bill now that does not have the regulatory framework to address the improvements and the advancement in regenerative therapies. And we need to establish the framework in order to do so. And so all we're doing is we're not reinventing the wheel, Marco City. We are simply repealing and replacing a bill that does not have the capacity to do what already exists. And back to St. Anne's, we have a regulatory framework. And when we find a rotten apple, we move and we get them out of our jurisdiction. We have in the medical community individuals who practice medicine on a daily basis that are subjected to malpractice. And there are protocols in place to address them in malpractice. And so while we have therapies that are beneficial to Bahamians, we have instances where things can go wrong, and that is when the regulatory framework must take precedence in order to address these things and subject them to the laws of the land.
While you're on your feet, the groups that I mentioned, why not consult with them?
We have,
Take a couple hours to
no, what we did was, like every bill, this bill has been around, the bill we're repealing has been around for 10 years, more than 10 years now. We've been through this, we've monitored it, we have done what we wanted with it, and it has outgrown its ability for the industry. We foreshadowed this bill coming in the speech from the throne. We laid the bill. There has been people, when we laid the bill, who have responded to what we are trying to accomplish, and we addressed those concerns. Well, it has been out there. It's been out there, Marco City. It's been out there. Not every bill you have to physically go to everyone and consult, like how we did with the cannabis bill. The cannabis bill was widely, and people will say we haven't consulted, but we consulted widely with the cannabis bill. This is simple repealing and replacing a bill. All groups are important. All groups are important, and many of healthcare providers in the country are looking forward to this bill to be a part of this lucrative industry, including members on the side opposite who have been praising the bill. If you attended our conference when we brought the international community in, this bill was discussed widely, this was discussed widely in the open. This is nothing where we're hiding anything. This is straightforward. And the only thing we're doing now is improving the regulatory framework. Some people feel the industry shouldn't be there, and that's fine. But there are a lot of people who are excited about this industry and will benefit from the medical therapies that will be provided from this industry. I can give you an example. The other day, the Stem Cell Committee was confronted with a group who wanted to introduce psychedelics into the country to treat post-traumatic stress disorders. So as we did the research, we realized that the double-blinded trials in the United States have proved beneficial effects for the use of psychedelics in the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorders in military people who have these serious complications. And so they were looking for a jurisdiction where they can use these drugs in collaboration with psychiatrists and psychologists to treat some of these very difficult post-traumatic stress disorder cases. The bills themselves, too primitive to address them. And so what we need to do is, if we're going to be a jurisdiction, we need to have the legal framework in order to do it. And so this particular bill addressed that. There's always time for more and more consultation. And between me and you, we're satisfied that our consultations were adequate. We're satisfied when we did our Health Inc. Summit, and we had this open discussion with legal consultants from the UK, from the United States, with many local physicians who expressed interest in this field, were at the event, and they are excited for us to bring this forward and begin now to expand our capability and blueprint for gene therapy, longevity, cancer therapy in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and to allow scientists to combine with local Bahamians, because you cannot get in this industry unless you have a local Bahamian partner or a clinician working along with you who can improve the delivery of healthcare services by the transference of knowledge from these highly technical biotechnical teams. And so I'm satisfied with the bill. Consultation can go on and on. We believe that we need to pass this bill and enact this bill so that we can enhance our regulatory framework in the country and get on with providing these essential therapies that a lot of Bahamians are going abroad to receive.
Thank you, Honorable. Senator, Honorable Member.
Hines made a comment, reply back to me to say that if there was something that he could take to live longer, he would. Madam Speaker, as was the case with this Raider gentleman, where there was the injection of fetal stem cells, I can say for a fact, Madam Speaker, that I won't be injecting anything like fetal stem cells into my body, even if it means that I will live longer. And I would like for the member for Tall Pines, Minister of Health, to officially say for the record that no part of this new hospital facility, which is classified according to the Bahamas government website as a specialty hospital, a facility that will house 200 beds and focus on the needs of women and children. It will, in addition, offer other healthcare services such as neonatal intensive care unit, a morgue, and technology to assist in infection prevention and control measures. None of the human body materials that will go into the longevity and regenerative therapies practice that's coming up in the Bahamas will come from this new Bahamian hospital, Madam Speaker. And it's interesting to me, not only that these two have some connection, Madam Speaker, but the bill that had great consultation, as the member for Tall Pines just admitted, the cannabis bill, has been moved back in the legislative agenda to allow this bill to be pushed forward. So can the Minister for Tall Pines state for the record that no human materials that are at this new hospital will be used or permitted to be used in the longevity and regenerative therapies that are envisioned under this legislation?
Madam Speaker, the member for St. Anne's is really taking the debate to as low as you possibly can. In the healthcare industry, there are many procedures that are done that stem cells are a part of. We do stem cells in the process of treating various types of leukemias, treating lymphomas. As a matter of fact, when you're actually doing a bone marrow transplant, in many types of illnesses, you do use stem cells, and you do use exosomes and many different types of tissue. This is what modern medicine is about. When you begin to treat sophisticated cancers that requires bullet attack on certain tumors, all different types of cellular tissues can be used. And for him to make a statement that a doctor who practiced medicine in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, who want to use cellular tissues in the treatment of their patients, will not have access to a tertiary healthcare facility, I find that to be ludicrous. And the reality is that any hospital in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, under a licensed physician, whether it be foreign or Bahamian, who are practicing advanced medical procedures in the country and are using FDA-approved components as well as other forms of treatment to improve lives, to cure debilitating medical illnesses, are welcome in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And